Hi, in this module, we learn to work with text functions and also text in general in Microsoft Excel. So in this module, we're going to learn about fundamentals of working with text, how to get information about a text, we'll learn how to extract part of a text, and we'll also learn how to stitch multiple texts into one longer text. We'll learn to modify certain text, and we'll also learn to change data types from string, in other words text, to certain other data types or other data types into a string. So let's get started. In the first chapter, let's understand how to use text in Microsoft Excel. We can type a text directly inside a cell. However, if you are using a text in a formula, the text either has to sit in another cell or we have to use them in double quotes. So for example, here I am checking whether this cell B14 is equal to USD. Now the text USD is already entered in cell C11. I can go and select that. On the other hand, if the text is not inside the cell, then another thing we can do is type the text directly into a formula within double quotes. But in case if we don't use the double quotes, Excel will treat this text as a reference to a name, and since right now we don't have any name called USD, it will return a name error to us. Now let's move on to the next chapter. In this chapter, we shall learn about how to extract information about a text. So we have a text called Senior Financial Analyst in cell C6, and we are going to be extracting certain information about that. The first thing we are going to do is to find length of that string. And to find the length, what we can do is use the len function. So equals len, open the bracket and select the string. And now we get to know that that particular cell has 24 characters including spaces. Now what if I want to find out where the first space occurs? In order to know about the position of a space in a word or any character inside a word, what we need to do is to use the find function or a search function. So I'm going to use the find function here. I'm going to find for a space. The space is a text which we have to enter in double quotes. I'll put a comma and I'm finding the space in cell C6 and I'll close the bracket. So now I get answer as 7. The 7 here indicates that the first space in the text Senior Financial Analyst occurs at the 7th place. What if I want to get the second space? Because I already know that there is a space in the first 7 letters. What if I wanted to get the second one? In that case, we could use the same find function, find for a space in cell C6, but this time we have to specify a starting position. Since we already know that we have a space in 7th place and the second space has to come after the 7th position. So the starting number here can be mentioned as 7 plus 1. 7 is the position of the previous space and I'm going to add 1. So this is going to tell me where the first space is occurring when looked from the 8th character onwards. But what you have to understand is, while this formula ignores the first 7 spaces, the answer it returns is the space position from the starting point. So 17 here is from the beginning and not from 7th or the 8th point that we mentioned here. Just like find function, we also have one more function called as search function. The difference between a find function and a search function is that find function is case sensitive while a search function is not case sensitive. So for example, if I were to find out where does the word analyst start, so C12 as the word analyst, and I'm going to say where does the word analyst come in cell C6, I'm going to get answer as 18. 18 here indicates that the word analyst starts at the 18th position, right? So since the word analyst has many characters, it points out the starting point of the word, which is our 18th position, which we can also verify because we know that the second space is in the 17th place and the word analyst comes after that, which means it has to be in the 18th place. So the problem with find function is always case sensitive. So in the previous case, the word analyst was properly capitalized in terms of the first letter. But in the next letter, analyst is entered in all small letters And here when I use the formula, I get a value error because the text analyst starting with a small character does not appear anywhere in cell C6. If you don't want your find operation to be case sensitive, then you can instead use another function called as search function. The search function does almost all what find function does, except that it is not case sensitive. So these are some of the functions that you can use to pull out information about a text. In the next chapter, we'll learn how to extract parts of a text. I again have the same word called senior financial analyst. I have already figured out some of the critical data points. So we know the length of the text is 24 letters. The first space occurs at the 7th place and second space occurs at the 17th place. Now how do we extract the text? So first I'm going to teach you the traditional approach which is available in all versions of Microsoft Excel. So firstly I'm going to use a left function. A left function can help us extract part of a text from the beginning. So I won't get the first word, so I'll start with the cell C6. And here I have to mention how many letters I want. The word senior is 6 letters, so if I type 6, this is going to extract the first 6 letters out of the word. But keep in mind, we probably don't want to type the numbers manually. So in that case, one thing we can do is, since we know that the space comes in the 7th place, the first letter will have to be one letter before where the first space comes. So I can select cell C8 minus 1, enter, and we've got the answer. What about the last word? Now I want to pull out the last word, which in this case is senior financial analyst. If you pull out the last word, one thing we can do is use the right function. So the word analyst has 7 letters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the function right, select the cell and type comma 7 and close the bracket. Now I've got the last word out. Again, I had to manually count the words, which is not very desirable because we can't be counting various words in a sheet, especially if there are lots of words to count. So what is the other alternative? The other alternative is, we know that the length of the text is 24 letters and the first space comes in the 7th position, but we are looking for the third word and third word comes in the 17th position. So since 24 letters are there and we have the second space coming in 17th position, we should have 24 minus 17 characters in the last word. So 24 minus 17 is 7 and that is the answer we are getting here. What if we wanted to extract middle of any text? In this case, I want to extract the word financial from it. Now the second word will be between the first space and the second space. We know that the first space is in the 7th position. So that means the second word will have to start at the 8th position. So we can use the mid function to pull this out. So mid C6, comma, starting number is going to be cell C8, which tells me the position of the first space, plus 1. And how many letters I want? 7th position is a space, 17th position is a space. That means in between we have text from 8th position to 16th position. That's 9 characters. That's essentially going to be my position of second space minus position of the first space minus 1 and close the bracket, and this helps us extract the middle part of the text. Now here we had only 3 letters or 3 words and we could easily extract them. Some passages have lots of text. In that case, how do we extract them? And here is where some of the new functions that have come can be useful. But these functions are still in beta stage as of March 2022. But let's learn how to work with that. If you want to extract the first word, you could use the function equals text before, and here we are going to select the text, senior analyst. The delimiter here, we want to pull out data that's before a space. We can select that. And which word do we want? I want the first word. That means I want to pull out the one that is there before the first space comes. So comma 1. Press enter. We've got the word senior here. Now what if you want to get the last word? See, in this case, I can use the word text after, and the text here is C6. and the delimiter is a space, and I want to get the text that's after the second space. In this case, I know that, so I'm going to type comma 2. And I'll close the bracket, press enter. We've got that. Middle word, I can again use the same text after or text before if I know where the word comes. So I can say text after C6, comma, space. Middle word comes after the first space, so I could put comma 1 and I can close it. This one, however, extract the full part of the text after the first word, which is financial analyst. There is also another function called as text split, which can help us to split all the words separately. So I could type equals text split, select cell C6, specify the column delimiter. If you want them one besides the other, you could put the space here within double quotes in the second as a second parameter. On the other hand, if you wanted one below the other, then leave the second parameter blank and put this delimiter character, which is space in our case, as a third parameter, which is a row delimiter, and press enter, and we get them one below the other. So this is how we can extract text from a particular passage or a paragraph. Now let us learn in this chapter how to stitch text. So for example, if I have a text with the first name in one cell and last name in another cell, how do I get the full name? There are two ways to do it. One is to use the ampersand sign. So I could use cell C8, which is the first name, ampersand. I need a space after this. So I'll put the space within double quotes. And I want the last name after this. So I'm again going to put the ampersand key and select the last word. Press enter and we've got the answer. Alternatively, we can also use one more function called concatenate. So in this concatenate function, what we could do is we could select the first word, comma, space within double quotes, comma, third word. You can close it and we'll get the answer. If you're using Office 16 and onwards, you can also use a function called concat. A concat function will help us stitch multiple texts in one go if those texts are in different ranges. So I could type equals concat and I'm going to select all these names. I close the bracket and you notice that I've got all the names together. But what if we wanted to stitch them, but we wanted to stitch them with certain delimiters in between? So let us say I want these 4 words to come in one cell, but they have to be comma separated. In that case, you could use a function called TEXTJOIN. So in TEXTJOIN, you have to specify the delimiter character. That means what character do you want to come as a partition between each of these words. So in this case, I want a comma. Then you again put a comma. If you don't have any word in a cell in between, what do you want to do about that? Do you want to ignore them? You have to specify that. I'm going to choose to ignore such empty cells, comma. Then you can go and select all the cells and close the bracket. Now we notice that all the 4 names have come together with commas separated. You can also stitch a text with a static text, and that can be done by putting the static text inside double quotes. So I want, let's say, the name trisha.arora, that is there, the user ID, and I want the email ID to come as trisha.arora@abc.com. So what I can do is I can select this cell G8 and within double quotes @abc.com. And this stitches the text together and gives us a text called trisha.arora@abc.com. In this chapter, let us learn how to modify an existing text. So what I have here is a phrase called Nisha gave a check for INR 3000. That is the text I have. That's the string. Now you may want to do certain cleanups to that. Text. So let us say what I want to do is I want to replace the word CHQ with the word check. This can be done using a function called as substitute. So I'm going to type equal substitute, select the text C8, comma. I am going to type CHQ, but I am going to intentionally make a mistake and I'm going to type it with capital C, CHQ, and I'm going to say replace this CHQ with the word check. This is not going to work because substitute function is case sensitive, and within double quotes I type capital C instead of small c. So one thing that you can do is you can replace with this with small c, and I press enter, and you see that it works absolutely fine. You can also use a function to mask certain text. See, we already know that this text is of 30 characters, and in the 22nd position is where the word INR appears. And I want to mask everything that comes after INR, or rather including the word INR. That means 8 characters have to be replaced with a text called X. So the way to do that would be to use a replace function, equals replace. The text is in cell C8. Here we are going to get the starting position. So my starting position is from 22 onwards. And how many letters do I want to replace? The total text is 30. So 30 minus 22, 8 letters have to be replaced. And replaced with what? I just want to have a X coming there. So this X is a text. So when we are typing it in a formula, it has to be within double quotes. So put X and close the bracket, and we've got the answer. In fact, we get the answer as X0. That is because when we replace 30 minus 22, that is 8 characters we replaced. But including the last character, we actually have 9 characters. So I will have to change it as C9 minus C10 plus 1. What if instead of just having one single letter called X, you want all the characters, all the 9 characters to be replaced as X? In that case, we could use the same replace function, replace C8, starting at C10, the number that is there in C10, which is row or character number 22. How many characters do we want to replace? 30 minus 22, that is in cell C9 minus cell C10 plus 1, and replace it with the character X coming 9 times. How do we do that? For that, there is another function in Microsoft Excel called as rept. So I'm going to say repeat the character X. How many times? 9 times. And how do we get that 9? Cell C9 minus C10 plus 1. Close the bracket. I'm closing the rept function, the repeat function, and I'm going to close the replace function. I press enter. I've got the answer that I wanted. Now let's also learn about how to change the type of a string. So right now what I have is, I have a decimal number called 0.50, and I want this as a text reading as 50%. So the way to do that would be to type equals text, T-E-X-T. So I'm going to convert the number. So the number has to be selected here in cell C9. And what format do I want out of it? The format I want is as a percentage. How do we specify that? So in custom format, we can go and search all the format codes. But one way we can do that is, we can type 0% and close the bracket. 0 here is a placeholder indicating that we want a number in percentage format. So 0 is just a placeholder for a number, and then I'm putting percentage next to it to indicate that I want it in a percentage format. I press enter. Now this cell has become a text. How do I know this cell is a text? One thing you can do is, text by default will have left alignment, and here we can notice that this cell has left alignment. If the same was a number, the number would have a default right alignment. So that way you can be sure that this is a text. Sometimes you also want to convert a text that looks like a number into a proper number. How do we do that? So here I have a text called 22JAN21. It's a text, but it's a date, and date is essentially a number. So if you want it to be properly treated as a date, what we can do is use a value function, equals value, and select the cell and close the bracket. And here you notice that this 22nd January 21 has come as a proper date. Besides this, occasionally as an end user, you may also want to convert a text into its ASCII code, or convert a ASCII code back into a text. So every text has an underlying ASCII code. So there is an ASCII code 65. If you want to know what is the underlying text or convert that ASCII code into a text, you could use the CHAR function, and the CHAR function will convert this character or this ASCII code into a letter. CHAR indicates capital A. Sometimes I have a letter and I want to find out its ASCII code. For that, you could use the function code. So I'm going to use the word code and I'm going to select the text. The code function will help me find out the underlying ASCII code of this text, small a, and that is 97. So these are the text functions that we had to learn before we get started with Microsoft Excel to doing any assignments. We have a lot of chapter end tests to practice. So try them, get more familiar with the text function, and then you can move on to number functions as part of the next module.